Hello, welcome to the Feminine Bite. My name is Erin, and I'm here with Emily, and we don't have an unhinged opening because this is a part 2 that we didn't think that we were gonna have. I tried so hard to condense this, and I was like, we're gonna get this out in an episode. No.
Erin being condensed? What's that? Who? What? Crazy.
Crazy. I was like, wow, I'm getting all of these. It's gonna be we're gonna do great. It's fine. We didn't have a second. We filmed these in sets of 2, and we didn't have a second topic. So, this just kind of worked out.
Yeah.
So, last we were with Catalina, he robbed his uncle and stayed in Panama. He stayed in Panama. He stayed in Panama and started working for some guys and almost drowned. But it was okay because they got their shipment. Catalina's like the original boomer. Yeah, I almost drowned on the job, but, back in my day, we were, dedicated to the company.
That's the sacrifice you have to make in order to move up in the world.
So, we are going to be talking about a man named Reyes. Catalina sees this man as a worthy rival, but honestly, Reyes is just a dude with an attitude problem that crosses Catalina once. Twice.
Me too. Honestly.
The one thing that Abraham Lincoln and Catalina De Erauso have in common is bad experiences at the theater. So, Catalina goes to a theater to watch a show, and Reyes sits in front of him, and Catalina says, I asked him if he wouldn't mind moving a bit to the side, and Reyes responded in a nasty tone, and I gave him back a little of the same. Then he told me I'd best disappear, or he'd be forced to cut my face wide open. Seeing as how I was weaponless, save for a short dagger, I made my exit. And Catalina was like, enemy number 1. Imagine a man, you go to the movies and a man sat in front of you, and you're like, hey, could you move? And he goes, I'm gonna cut your face up. And you're like...
And you don't call the police.
You don't call the police. Times were just different back then, And, again, if we're going to make an argument that Catalina is a man, our strongest piece of evidence is this, because only an ego-bruised man would behave the way that Catalina behaves. Next. So, the next time Catalina sees Reyes, this is what happens. Emily, I believe we're going to be reading... I'm going to double check
Is
this.
it
Quote
F?
F? Yes. You're going to be reading quote F for me.
I saw Reyes' name. I assumed that's where I was going. I approached Reyes from behind and said, Senor Reyes. He turned and asked, what do you want? I said, this is the face you were thinking of cutting up. And I gave him a slash worth 10 stitches. That's crazy. 10 stitches? 10?
Yeah.
That's at least half a foot.
Literally insane. That's their reaction. It's also such a badass line, though. This is the face that you wanted to cut up. Stab, stab, stab.
Right?
We're gonna have to tell our friend who's gonna play a rogue in the next D&D campaign.
Oh, yeah.
We just need to give her a list of quotes that Catalina says, and they're like, no, these are good, trust me. Here's some inspo. How do you think life is going for Catalina right now, if this is... Okay, so Catalina knifes this man. How well do you think it's going to go for them post-knife stabbing?
Not great. I would assume... I could only assume, jail time. But
yeah.
Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, so he ends up running away.
Again,
he stabs him, the cops are coming... The medieval cops, so they're technically sheriffs and constables, but the medieval cops end up showing up, and Catalina does the same thing every single time. I have cut out 90% of these events because of how often it happens, but it begins with Reyes. Catalina flees to the church and claims sanctuary in order to avoid being arrested. Now, claiming sanctuary in a church was a real thing in this era. If you've seen Hunchback of Notre Dame, you've seen, like, Esmeralda and, like, Quasimodo's mother, like, the way that they claim sanctuary in the church of Notre Dame to avoid Frollo. Have you seen? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. So you could not arrest nor harm someone claiming sanctuary in a church. It's easy to forget because of world events, but Christianity is fundamentally a religion about redemption. And so the idea behind claiming sanctuary is basically the church wants to give, like, wicked people a second chance when the government or the state wants to punish them. But when you claim sanctuary in a church, you are most likely going to be exiled from the town, and you better hope that you do not fuck up again. Because the church is, like, advocating for you to just be exiled instead of face your crimes. I want you to think if Catalina takes his second chance and just, you know.
I can't imagine he would.
No. He gets, like, 50 second chances.
Oddly enough, 50 Second Chances was my favorite band in high school.
Shut up.
I'm sorry. It was right there. I had to take it.
So the church negotiates Catalina's freedom, and his boss, Juan, effectively sets up, like, a marriage to allow Catalina to avoid exile. Beatriz is a character whom Catalina would visit often, and Beatriz is so horny for Catalina. There was a time where Catalina's is like, I had to smack her to get her to go away. Like, Beatriz is just wants to fuck Catalina so badly. But Catalina does not want to, and, like, they kind of can't get married because in order to consecrate that marriage, you have to, you know, have sex, and that would out Catalina is being assigned female at birth, which would be a big problem. So Catalina, like, Juan shows up and he's like, okay, I've set up this whole thing so you don't have to be exiled and you can continue working for me. And Catalina's like, actually, I'd rather take exile.
Actually, kick me out.
I'm ready to go. Boot in my ass. So Catalina takes the exile. He's fairly upset about Juan's marriage plot, and this is how Catalina describes it. He says, "It should be noted that Beatriz is my master's mistress, and that what he had in mind was to hold on to both of us, me for business and her for pleasure." So Catalina is not a fan of this guy, Juan, who is just kind of really obsessed with Catalina in a non-sexual way. He's like, he's such a hard worker. I can't let him go. Like, bro, this is weird. But we're not done with Reyes. Like, you know, that's the reason why Catalina is getting exiled, right? Because Catalina got in a fight with him. So, on your list of quotes, I've written the 10 Commandments. I want you to guess which commandment Catalina is going to break next. And my only hint is that Catalina has not broken this commandment yet.
I have to read the 10 Commandments because I was not raised religious, so I don't know the 10 Commandments. Okay. I feel like I need a pen almost. What does bear false witness mean?
You won't, like, if you were to testify in court, you wouldn't make something up to get someone in trouble.
The smartass in me is like, oh, did he work on Sunday? Is it killing?
It is.
Yay! I did it!
He killed someone!
He killed somebody!
So, Catalina's boss, Juan, is obsessed with Kat. What happens is that, basically, like, imagine that Kat worked at Walmart, and Kat's manager loved Kat so well that instead of just firing Kat, just transferred Kat to a different Walmart in a different town. That's basically what happened to Catalina. But Reyes eventually tracks Catalina down, and in a scuffle, Catalina takes Reyes' life, and as far as we know, this is Catalina's first murder. This is the first murder in this book.
First. One would argue the first murder is one too many.
I mean, even if we cut out everyone Catalina kills as a military person, yeah, this is still her first murder.
Okay. Alright.
The church cannot protect Catalina at this point, neither can Juan. And basically helps set up Catalina with, like, clothes, money, and a letter of introduction. And helps Catalina escape. But the other person who helps Catalina escape is a sheriff, one of the fantasy medieval cops. I said fantasy medieval cops. One of the medieval cops. And Catalina notes that the sheriff just happened to be Basque and helped Catalina out of brotherhood of being Basque countrymen. This is not the first time this will happen, and eventually it will become comical. One point, Catalina is just, like, throwing hands with somebody in the street, and Catalina's like, it was 3 against 1, and then 2 Basque individuals showed up and helped me. And it's like, did they? Are you sure, Cat? The only important detail about Catalina's time in the city Lima, this is Catalina's 3rd scandal. They keep ending up in HR's office. Scandal number 3. And it's also one of the few times we actually get insight into Catalina's sexuality, which is why I included it. Emily, you're going to be reading quote G. This is the spiciest scene in the book.
Okay.
Have fun.
Oh God.
Don't worry, it's about as spicy as pepper.
Says the white woman. Sorry. But at the end of 9 months, I worked for Diego. He told me I should think about making my living elsewhere. The reason being that there were 2 young ladies in the house. His wife's sister and I had become accustomed to frolicking with them. One in particular who had taken a fancy to me. And one day, when she and I were in the front parlor, and I had my head in the folds of her skirt, and she was combing my hair while I ran my hand up and down between her legs, Diego de Solarte.
Sorry, Diego.
Sorry. Happened to pass by the window and spied us through the grate. Just as she was telling me I should go to Potosi and seek my fortune so the 2 of us could be married. Diego went into his office, called me a little while later, asked for the books, took them, fired me, and I left. Damn.
Poor Catalina. This is by no means Catalina's only moment with women, but it is the most graphic one. Mm-hmm. And it's, obviously, it's not graphic at all.
Yeah.
The most graphic line is that she was rubbing down this lady's thighs. Mm-hmm. Catalina's memoir notably lacks any real insight into his sexuality. He seems fairly disinterested in marriage and romance most of the time. And I do have a theory as to why Catalina acts this way, and it'll make sense at the end of this episode, where I'll be like, this is why I think this is.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure this section was included because this memoir went through a period in time where people were trying to de-lesbianize it and, like, erase this sort of... It's not women loving women because we can't really say for sure if Catalina was a woman or not, mm-hmm. but there's definitely queer love going on here regardless, and so there was a period of time where they tried to really erase that, and then in I think it was the 1990s, they tried to, like, put all of that stuff back in. So I'm bringing it up. This isn't very important. I just want to make sure that I'm including it so that we, I don't want to be like the people of the past who's like, no, take the lesbians out. They were just really good friends.
No, put the lesbians in.
Give me more lesbians.
I want lesbians on my table by the end of the day.
Give me pictures of lesbians.
God damn it.
And again, we mentioned this in the first episode. Catalina is... We don't necessarily know if Catalina is transgender or not, and whether or not Catalina is straight or a lesbian kind of hinges on whether or not you interpret Catalina as transgender or not. The safest sort of way to talk about this is that, like, yes, Catalina has some sort of gender non-binariness, and they are probably also a lesbian, even though those things, the two things inherently contradict. I think because the way that the English language is, in that our sexuality terms are determined by what gender we are, that, like, when it comes to trans individuals, you can have that contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, Caitlyn Jenner is a trans woman, but they often decline answering whether or not they are now technically a lesbian. And I think it's because Caitlyn doesn't really identify with the lesbian label. I think Caitlyn sees themselves as straight, even though their new or their correct gender identity being a woman and their sexual attraction of being attracted to another woman, that in their lie you would be like, oh, that makes you a lesbian. It's just kind of the failure of the English language, honestly. And, like, terms, gender identity terms, sexuality identity terms, they're only as useful to you if it helps you make sense. So, like, I don't even care if your gender identities and your sexuality terms contradict each other, because it's like, whatever term makes you feel better. Like, go with what you want.
Yeah.
Catalina's a very complicated person, and he's dead, so we can't ask him.
Yeah.
Why did you have to die? I got a question.
Why did you have to die? You couldn't have waited, like, 2 more centuries, man? Come on.
Yeah, man. Why couldn't you just, like, gotten bit by a vampire? Anyways, we're gonna be moving on to Catalina as a soldier now that we're done talking about as Catalina as a lesbian. So after getting fired by Diego, Catalina, no relation to my friend Diego, Catalina ends up becoming a soldier with, like, Catalina's basically promised travel and gold, and becomes a soldier, and ends up working for his brother Miguel. Because as I said in the first episode, the boys all went to conquest, the girls all went to the nunnery.
Mm-hmm.
So he has no idea that Cat is his sibling. Though Catalina, like, when Miguel's like, where are you from? And Catalina says San Sebastian, he's like, oh, and he asks about his family, and Catalina literally says, and he asks about his favorite sister, Catalina the nun. Yeah, like, that totally happened. That this soldier who, like, left when Catalina was a baby, that he's like, oh, I only want to know about Catalina.
Yeah.
Like, what? No, I don't believe that sentence happened. I don't believe that happened. Most importantly, they're both Basque, so Miguel helps Catalina secure a better position as a soldier, that I believe. And everything kind of goes sideways after Miguel attacks Catalina, because Catalina was hanging out with his mistress. Miguel presumes that Catalina was, like, trying to bone down with her, and Catalina's like, that is not what was happening. And yet again, Catalina runs to the church for sanctuary because they get into a fight in the street. Catalina is always fighting people in the street. Girl,
yeah.
take your fights onto private land, okay? Like the rest of us. I need Catalina to listen to any country song written by someone who is a woman trying to kill her husband. I feel like Catalina would find those very inspirational.
Yeah, I agree.
He and Miguel make up. They make amends. They work together for a total of 3 years, and it sort of comes to an end. They separate for a while, but there's this moment where Catalina is asked to be somebody's second in a duel. But unlike what we learn in the 10 Duel Commandments in Hamilton, the seconds join the fight in this duel. Down there, that's what they did.
Yeah.
So Catalina delivers, like, a deadly blow against her opponent's second, And this is where we get the only plot twist in this book. And Emily, you're going to be reading quote H.
Okay. "Ah, traitor," he said. You have killed me. I thought I recognized the stranger's voice. "Who are you?" I asked. And he answered, "Captain Miguel de Erauso."
He killed his own brother. On accident.
Whoops.
He ran into my knife. He ran into my knife 10 times. So, yeah, whoopsie daisies, accidentally killed my brother, and then he escapes. I want you to guess, how do you think Catalina escapes murdering his brother?
Running.
Yeah.
And running, and running.
Straight to a church, claims sanctuary, and escapes. Because somebody helps Catalina escape. Again, Catalina keeps doing this. He can't keep getting away with this. I'll be brief with Catalina's time as a soldier. He becomes a lieutenant because he successfully kills an enemy that has some kind of leadership position. Catalina uses the word chief, but I'm unaware if Mupache Nation uses the word chief. It's one of those things where it's like, kind of colonizers used chief as a catch-all term for a leader in any native tribe. So I'm not entirely sure if Mupache Nation even has chiefs. So as far as I could say, some sort of leader Catalina kills. Then Cat recovers a flag that was stolen, and this is how, with these accomplishments, Catalina becomes a second lieutenant. His rise, though, through the ranks as a ruthless soldier is stopped when Catalina kills someone his captain wanted alive. Otherwise, we might have seen Catalina further his military career. But basically, the army was like, what the fuck are you doing? Murdering people that we need alive. Stop that. Just bop him on the nose. Stop it. Stop murdering people.
So, like, in terms of, like, named people, the body count's a 3.
Yeah. Technically, we're at 4. We don't know how many people Catalina killed in their military service, but we have Reyes, we have her brother, we have the Mupache Nation, political figure, and then we have this one captive. We're gonna lose, we're gonna get to a point where we're gonna lose track, because eventually Catalina just is like, oh, I killed a couple of guys here, I killed a couple of guys there. Like,
yeah. Like, I assume, like, in the military time, there was, you know...
Yeah.
In terms of, like, named people throughout, though.
Yeah, we're at, like, 4. It basically... Catalina ends up just, like, deserting eventually because there's no more money involved and they can't rise to the ranks.
Catalina running?
And... this is where we sort of start. Catalina develops a gambling addiction and a gambling problem. And so between these gambling problems and more arrests, he ends up very poor, very lost. And another moment where Catalina recalls truly traumatizing events with such casualness that we're bordering on the verge of absurdity. I'm going to read this for you. Catalina says, I set out along the coast, suffering a good deal, especially from thirst, for there was no fresh water to be had for miles around. Along the way, I fell in line with 2 soldiers, both deserters, determined to die rather than to let ourselves be arrested. Which, by the way, that's a bitching line. I would rather die than be arrested. We had our horses, our swords, our firearms, and God on high. That's my next t-shirt. I have my horses, my swords, my firearms, and God on high. But, like, Catalina is just so fucking casual about it. Like, what? Like, oh, we were just, I almost died of thirst, but it was fine. I found these 2 guys and we fucked around for a little bit. Like, what? You almost died of thirst? And, like, Catalina and these 2 deserters basically starve their way through the wilds, and both of these men die along the way. We don't know if Catalina killed them or they simply just fell over dead, but, like, this is, if we're thinking of this in, like, a movie structure, somehow this is Catalina's dark night of the soul. He has a mental breakdown in Bumblefuck Nowhere, South America. And somehow, through the grace of God, accidentally stumbles across 2 people who bring him to a place where there is food and shelter, saving Catalina from starving to death.
Wow.
Like, if Catalina did not run into these people, Catalina would have died.
Yeah.
And the world would have been better for it. I'm sorry, Catalina's not a great person.
No.
Because, like, Catalina's also racist, and he does at one point also own slaves, but we don't really get a lot of details about that. But the important thing here is that Catalina is racist, and the woman who takes him in is biracial, and he's disgusted by that. And this woman wants Cat to marry her daughter, who is black. Cat's disgusted by that. And while Cat is trying to get this wedding stopped, he gets involved with his friend's niece. So Cat is trying to get this wedding called off and trying not to get caught cheating. It's a fucking disaster. And all the while, Cat is like, oh, it's a black woman. He is using much more inappropriate words. There's no, it's not the slur version, but it's still a version that I'm like, Cat, come on.
Yeah.
Why you be like this?
Come on, man. That's crazy.
It's that section is so insane, because it's like, what do you mean? You don't want to get married, that's fine, but then you're also cheating on your fiancé, and then they live in the same town, and so you're just trying to make sure that they don't meet each other. This is, if you take out all of the racist stuff, there's some good plot lines here if you wanted to write a rogue D&D character.
Yeah.
This is a good place to get some inspiration.
Just take out all the bullshit.
Yeah, take
out the racism, the colonization, the cheating.
The whore. Well, no, keep the whoring.
Yeah, keep the whoring. Whoring is fine. The killing, a little bit.
Just dial it back.
Yeah, just like 2 notches.
Yeah.
Like 2 bodies ago.
So this next section I've labeled Gambling, Colonizing, Terrorizer.
Okay.
Because I could keep telling you stories play by play, but we are falling into just, it ends the same way. So I'm going to just give you, as best I can, just some more highlights.
It all ends the same way. Catalina running.
Running into a church.
Yeah.
So, if you would like to know these details, I would recommend you pick up this autobiography. It's fairly short. It's only 80 pages. And my particular version, it has a foreword by Michelle Steptoe and Gabriel Steptoe, and a foreword by Marjorie Garber. The foreword and the introduction are very, very informative if you wanted to learn a little bit about medieval Spain and, like, sex and gender and all of that stuff. It's actually very, very informative. I would recommend you pick it up. So, Catalina, in his post-soldier life, he is a gambling, colonizing terrorizer. He destroys villages. He murders people who tries to rob him. There's this reoccurring bit where Catalina gambles, throw hands with the people he's gambling with. Somebody dies or get maimed. Cat has to run into a church or run away from town. Basque individuals occasionally show up to help Cat out of sheer ethnic solidarity. It keeps happening. Like, there's one point where Cat is, like, cornered, and it's, like, 3 against 1, and then 2 Basqueros just show up and help Cat. For no reason, other than they're all Basque. How do you know that Catalina is Basque?
My question is, how many churches do you have to seek sanctuary from until you're just, like, blacklisted from, like, Christianity? Like, to the point where it's, like, their picture is, like, hung up by the place where all the employees clock in, like they used to do at the grocery store I used to work at. Like, how many times does it have to happen until there's a church that has a picture of Catalina's face and it says, "Do not serve"?
I'm just imagining a priest putting in his punch card. Just another day loving God. Who? Isn't that bitch in my church right now?
Gotta punch in for the Lord.
It's...
Do they not talk to each other? Do these churches, they're just like...
There are parts, there are a few sections where they get Catalina arrested before they make it to a church, and there's one scene, I didn't put it in here in detail, but Catalina convinces the cops, the medieval cops, to let them go to mass. And the moment they get into the church, they claim sanctuary. And that's how Catalina escapes.
Idiots. Cops were idiots back then, and they're idiots now.
We're on your team, medieval cops. We want you to arrest this man. There are also 2 times where Catalina gets arrested and then almost executed. And the first time, Catalina refuses to take confession, and Catalina says, I told him I'm Protestant. So I'm not going to listen to a priest. And I was like, what? And I think that's the one where Catalina was trying to trick them to get Catalina to get Catalina out of church. I think it's that one. But it's so funny where Catalina's like, I just told him I was Protestant. Because it's like, no, you're not. Catalina is, I mean, a good Catholic? That's questionable. But Catalina is Catholic. I just thought it was so funny where Catalina's like, I told him I was Protestant. But the second time, I don't remember how Catalina escapes death the second time, because Catalina, claims sanctuary, and then they attempt to hang Catalina anyways, but, someone comes out of the woodwork right at the end or something like that. It's literally insane.
He was Basque.
Just help with some Basque row. Catalina also gets framed for knifing a woman in the face. I think this is one of the things that ends up why he almost gets hanged. So he gets framed for knifing a woman in the face. He gets almost hanged for that, and just manages to weasel his way out of it. At one point, he has to escort a woman to this is side quest shit. He has to escort a woman to a new town because her husband is trying to kill her because she tried to kill her husband. Do you want to know how that plotline ends? They end up in a church. Catalina ends up dueling this guy in a church. And then the wife and the husband the wife joins a nunnery and the husband becomes a Catholic monk. As a result of this. Because that was their only option. Because she tried to kill him, he tried to kill her, and Catalina just gets away.
Like he always does.
We get another oversight in that... A Catalina oversight is how I'm referring to these. In which Catalina, he spends one paragraph describing how he joined sailors and threw hands with the Dutch, and then later is accused of being a horse thief, and Catalina is more angry and spends more time about this part of being accused of being a horse thief than he does about going to war with the Dutch.
Yeah, I might have waged war with the Dutch, but I didn't steal no horses. Who's out here claiming that I stole any of these horses? How dare they?
What happened to the Dutch? Oh, we won. No, I actually think Catalina gets taken hostage by the Dutch and then it's just fucking thrown overboard. That is a traumatic experience. You lose, you get captured by the Dutch, you just get thrown overboard to die, but you're angry that somebody accused you of being a horse thief.
Yeah, because I ain't no horse thief.
I might be a murderous, colonizing, gambling terrorizer, but I ain't no horse thief.
I draw the line at horse thievery.
I can excuse going to war with the Dutch, but I draw the line at horse thief. You can excuse racism. Oh, jeez.
God.
Okay, and by the time we finish this highlight reel of the worst person to ever exist, Catalina thinks that he's fairly infamous. They eventually become very afraid of every lawman recognizing them. And at many points, random sheriffs do recognize him.
Well, yeah, because your mugshots at the fucking punch clock at every church.
They're putting your face on milk cartons.
You're on the FBI's most wanted, dude.
We're giving every prostitute a tramp stamp with your face on it, so that everybody knows.
There are billboards outside. Okay. Anyway.
Okay. There's in Pocahontas, the movie, there's this musical cue for the English, and the line is like, for the new world is like heaven, and with all the outs and free for glory, God and gold in the Virginia Company. That's Catalina. Glory, God, and gold. Those are the things that Catalina cares about.
Yeah.
Except for that one time where Catalina was like, I'm Protestant. Honestly, between Catalina and Christopher Columbus, I think Spain owes both an apology and reparations to the Americas for these two alone. Like, sorry about Kat and Chris. And I mean everything else too. But, like, specifically Kat and Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Kat and Chris sounds like a terrible sitcom. Sorry for Kat and Chris. So, one thing that this is her gambling section. We're not done with the gambling. Catalina cannot escape gambling. They have a huge gambling addiction. And in Guamanga, he is gambling and immediately arrested the moment the sheriff asks what the last city Catalina was in. It basically is like this. The sheriff is like, oh, where are you from? Catalina goes, I'm from San Sebastian. And he's like, oh, like, where have you been recently? And Catalina goes, oh, I'm from Cusco. And the sheriff blinks and he goes, you're under arrest. That is what happens. And I don't remember what crime Catalina did in order for that to happen, because they've got such a laundry list at this point. Mm-hmm. I've also, in this highlight reel, Catalina murders so many people in this highlight reel. He literally, cities get razed. Like, Catalina destroys an entire city at one point with, like, or I guess, like, a village, because they want money and gold, and then Catalina just, like, and I think this was when Catalina was a soldier, and then, like, his commander is like, we could put down roots here and farm and do things like that, and Catalina's like, I came here to pillage, not to be a farmer, and then Catalina leaves.
I came to this town for one reason and one reason only. Farming? No.
Gold? Yes. Queen.
But you're gonna, like, work for it and earn it, right? By work for and earning, you mean steal.
Stab.
You mean stab and steal, right?
The good old stab and steal. And I did a little bit of a stab and steal. We need to convince our friend who's going to play Rogue in our next campaign to name their knife Stab and Steal.
I think she would.
So, what matters about this last gambling turning into getting arrested is that Catalina manages to get himself into a church one more time to claim sanctuary, and this time, the bishop is involved.
Oh no.
Catalina is basically like, let me go talk to the bishop, and they do. And this is as best as we can describe as Catalina's coming to Jesus moment. We're going to be reading quote S.
Quote S.
Is our final quote.
I felt a calm sweeping over me. I felt as if I were humbled before God, that things were simpler than they had seemed before, and that I was very small and insignificant. And seeing that he was such a saintly man, and feeling as if I might also be in the presence of God, I revealed myself to the bishop and told him, Sir, all of this I have told you in truth, it is not so. The truth is that I am a woman, that I was born in such and such place, the daughter of this man and this woman, that at a certain age, I was placed in a certain convent with a certain aunt, that I was raised there and took the veil and became a novice, and that when I was about to profess my final vows, I left the convent for such and such reason, and went to such and such place, and undressed myself, and dressed myself up again, cut my hair, traveled here and there, embarked, disembarked, hustled, killed, maimed, wreaked havoc, and roamed about, until coming to a stop in this very instant at the feet of your eminence.
So that's what Catalina says to the bishop. I don't believe a single word. That
sounds like a love confession.
It's the most romantic Catalina has ever gotten, and she's talking to a bishop. Honestly, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really buy into this coming to Jesus moment, if only because, like, Catalina's not here. Like, Catalina didn't show up to this church to be like, I'm here to confess my sins or whatever like that. Mm-hmm. Catalina is very much about to be killed.
Yeah.
And when we discuss, or when historians are discussing Catalina's gender identity, this is the biggest hitch. That when Catalina's back is against the wall, Catalina says, I'm a woman. Mm. So, is Catalina a man? Is Catalina a woman? We don't know because, you know, it does rub a level of dubiousness because Catalina reveals himself to be a woman because he thinks it'll keep him alive. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we just don't know. So after this, the story of Catalina goes viral as much as a story in the Age of Conquest could go.
Viral being like maybe 50 people.
No, because Catalina is sort of this folklore myth. Mm. So, like, everyone knows about Catalina. It's just that most of it's not true because it's being exchanged by word of mouth. Mm. The plot of Catalina's life is very insane, and suddenly, like, especially everyone in this area knows Catalina, and while she has re-entered this nunnery in South America in order to evade arrest, like, they're spreading this story about Catalina, and then Catalina is in this nunnery in South America because if he's not in this nunnery, he's gonna get executed. Mm-hmm. Again, hiding in the church. This is one of the few very tender moments of the book. Catalina notes down that this bishop who they spoke to about this passes away. So we could assume that, you know, Catalina really did care for this bishop if they noted that he had passed away. Because, I mean, like, there are points where Catalina doesn't even name the people that he kills. He's like, they died, and I killed this person, and that person, and blah, blah, blah. You're like, what? Yeah. So, but here's the thing. Word finally reaches back from Spain that Catalina never completed her vows. So she gets kicked out of the nunnery that he is hiding in South America. Because he's not a nun. And he lied about it. He lied on his resume, and it took like 6 months for them to realize.
Oh my god.
But he boards a ship and sails home to Spain.
What?
I don't know if South America just, like, kicked him out or something like that. But yeah, at this point, after getting kicked out, and I would assume he goes home to Spain because he is so infamous in South America and his story is everywhere. I don't think he could get anywhere without running into trouble. So I don't really see him going home to Spain as anything more as, well, I gotta find a new place to terrorize.
Well, shit.
Gotta go find somewhere else. And he only had to be moved onto a different ship once because a fight broke out after hardcore gambling. So he's gambling on this ship. A fight breaks out. His brother is involved. He has another brother who's involved somehow. And he has to be moved ships while he is on his way out. In true Catalina fashion.
How many years does this span over? Like what we've covered so far? Like, maybe more specifically, like, from Catalina leaving the church until this point? Do we know?
No, we don't know.
Okay.
All I can say is that their adventures, I believe 1603 is a date that we get, and then another date we get is 1626. So, at the very least, that this adventure is 2 decades at most.
That's so long to just be like, I would just get tired.
Right? I would get exhausted.
Like, oh.
So, we're now into part 3. Catalina's finally home. Catalina finds work in Spain, in Madrid. There's some gambling, some luck, some time spent in jail. Catalina is not very good at changing his ways. Even though he was like, I want to be a good Christian bishop. As soon as he gets to Spain, he just kind of goes back to doing what he did in South America. He manages to get an audience with the king, and it's like, hey, I was a soldier, money. And the king gives him money. Because they verified that he was a soldier, so Catalina gets paid for being a soldier under the king.
Okay. It just...
It doesn't feel fair.
It gives very much like Deadbeat Dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a soldier. Can I have some money?
Please.
It's like, I did all of this work for you. You owe me. Catalina really is a deadbeat dad without being a dad.
Yeah.
Catalina also gets in conversation with another very important figure in history. Do you have any guesses? This is not, I'm not looking for a specific name. I'm looking for a title, someone's job position that Catalina got an audience with, a significant, prominent figure.
I'm assuming, like, a leader of a church.
Catalina gets in conversation with the Pope.
The Pope?
Yeah! Yeah. Huh?
Okay.
For a very important reason. So Catalina recollects this moment very plainly. In true, like, the way that Catalina is just too casual. Catalina is the same way with their conversation with the Pope.
Yeah, I got the Pope on speed dial.
You know, like...
Oh, let me just text the Pope. 1 second.
True, exactly. Like, when Matt Pat from Game Theory got to meet with the Pope, like, that was a whole thing, whole videos about it, and all of this thing, and he talks about the experience, and there's a lot of love and reverence and, like, awe and all of the, like, respect that it is of meeting an important religious figure, and Catalina's like, yeah, I went and hung out with the Pope for a bit.
Yeah, I just went over to his house.
And it's not for, like, okay, like, you know, if I, you know, as a practicing Catholic, if I were to meet the Pope, it would be for religious reasons, right? That is my leader, right? Well, that is the guy who's in charge of my church. Not my leader. Ugh.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's in charge of my church. So there's a lot of spirituality in me wanting to meet him, right? Catalina does not meet him for any reason other than this. Catalina wants to get permission to wear men's clothes. That's why she talks to the Pope. He talks to the Pope. He wants to wear pants. And the Pope has to do the stamp of approval.
Why is it I feel like that's really high up to just be like, hey, can I wear pants?
You want another reason?
Yeah.
Because that's why they killed Joan of Arc. So, Joan of Arc, what happened basically is that they arrested her and then they said that wearing men's clothes was heresy and she would not be executed so long as she did not repeat the heresy, but the guards basically took her clothes away and only gave her men's clothes, so she was forced to wear them again, and then they counted that as heresy, and that is why she was burned at the stake. And this happens before Catalina. So Catalina getting permission from the Pope is important, so that way Catalina is not technically committing heresy. And the church is definitely going to allow that, because at this point the church acknowledged the fact that Joan of Arc's trial was corrupted. And honestly, I'm not saying that this choice was made so they didn't have a second Joan of Arc scandal, but that's what it comes off to me as. We don't want a Joan of Arc around too, especially with somebody like Catalina. We don't want Catalina to be revered.
Yeah.
This is not a role model. So yeah, you can wear men's clothes, Catalina.
Yeah.
Now we have the last chapter. You would think that this story ends with Catalina talking to the Pope. Or perhaps Catalina ends it with, this is where I went to live afterwards. You know, Catalina goes to South America and lives the rest of their life under the name Antonio as a mule merchant.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that that's where those spots end. But that's not where it ends at all. We keep going after the Pope. And it is one of the most bizarre conversations. It's my favorite chapter in this book. I'm going to read it to you in its entirety. Don't worry, it's literally less than a page long.
Okay.
And this is how it goes. 1 month and a half in Rome, I left for Naples on the 5th of July, 1626. We set sail for Ripa. And one day in Naples, as I was strolling about the wharves, I was struck by the tittering laughter of two ladies who leaned against a wall, making conversation with two young bucks. They looked at me and I looked at them, and one said, "Signora Catalina, where are you going all by your lonesome?" "My dear harlots," I replied, "I have come to deliver 100 strokes to your pretty little necks and 100 gashes with this blade to the fool who would defend your honor." The women fell dead silent, and then they hurried off. That's how it ends. You can verify it yourself. That is the end.
What?
Yeah. So, what I love about this chapter is that, okay, so the two ladies, those are prostitutes, and they're asking Catalina if he wants to sleep with them, and Catalina says no, obviously. But the level of familiarity and also the fact that they call him Catalina very much implies that Catalina is a regular among the prostitutes of Naples, well enough that they could pick Catalina out of the crowd and identify him as female assigned at birth. One of the hilarious running bits of this memoir is that nobody recognizes Catalina, nor discovers that Catalina is assigned female at birth. But all the prostitutes in Naples can pick him out of the crowd no matter what he's wearing. Only the prostitutes recognize him. And that's why I think Catalina avoided prostitutes when he was in the New World. Because in the New World, they'd be able to recognize him. It's the hilarious bit of nobody recognizes Catalina except for two prostitutes at the end of the story.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. Wow. We just went on, like, a whole journey.
In 80 pages. Around the world in 80 pages.
Damn near literally.
Yeah, and I didn't even go into detail about the time where two people were sent to kill Catalina, and Catalina was like, "Can I bribe you?" And they were like, "Well, you're cool, yeah, I guess."
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Echo's got a lot to say.
Echo, what do you think of Catalina? Very astute. I agree.
Yeah.
So that's Catalina De Erauso. Terrorizer of the New World. Popular among whores.
That's how I want to be described.
Terrorizer of the New World Order and popular amongst whores.
Except for Terrorizer of the New World, I'm not going to be a colonizer. I'll just be like a slight menace.
A menace to rich people.
Yeah.
Are you a menace to rich people?
Yeah. Yeah, she is. Wow. This is such a small book.
It is.
And half of it is like the intro and the foreword.
Yeah. It is. It's so small. I would recommend anybody read it. And in terms of like approachability, it's fairly easy to read. Because part of it is because it's a translated text, so it's gone through sort of two lenses. There's not a lot of very big words in it. And Catalina writes fairly plainly. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of emotion in this book. Again, they almost starve to death at one point, and they're just casual about it. They go to war with the Dutch, but they're angry about being called a horse thief. Well, that is all we have. I hope you had a fun time, Emily.
I did.
This was, when I brought up the idea of doing this podcast with Emily, I was like, I have this crazy memoir that I desperately want to talk about that I read in college. And Emily was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure.
So that is Catalina. Again, if you Google Catalina, you will get rerouted to Antonio De Erauso. That is his name on Wikipedia. So if you're like wanting to learn more information, that is also a place where you can go. But again, I recommend you just pick up the memoir. It's pretty easy, pretty approachable. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what we're gonna be talking about next. We might.
I don't know.
Yeah, it might be J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling has done some new stuff on the internet these past few months. I don't know if you have seen.
I don't think I have.
Somebody brought up the point that the first Nazi book burning was a collection and library about sex and gender studies. Mm-hmm. And
I just saw a speech about that.
And JK was like, that didn't happen.
Okay. Okay. Alright. Yeah, so maybe we rehash JK's... rehash, but
yeah,
like...
I want to talk about JK, and I also, like, the thing that I want to do is that there's a lot of ethical debate about readership and fans of Harry Potter, and I think that would be an interesting thing just to, like, go into the details of. Mm-hmm. Because, here's the thing, we are not judging you if you like Harry Potter. We're not, but there are some problems attached to it that I feel like Harry Potter fans should be aware of.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there should be some level of awareness and education, so when I hate the fact that Harry Potter fans need to be super well educated in order to navigate just a book that they liked when they were 10. That is fucking ridiculous. So we might be talking about J.K. Rowling. I'll have to look at my list, but anyways, we've rambled on long enough. This has been The Feminine Bite with Erin and Emily and Echo. Tune in next time where we talk about something absolutely ridiculous that you are never going to be prepared for. You can find us on Instagram at The Fem Bite, where we post stuff sometimes.
I try.
We believe in you, Emily.
Echo, any closing remarks?
Fairly silent.
Wow.
Alright, goodbye, guys.